What makes a poem different from prose, drama or any other art form? Clement Brooks offers a very powerful clue. He says poetry dwells in paradox, and nowhere this idea manifests itself more powerfully than in Spenser's sonnet number 57 we are to take up today. The poem begins with two unforgettable words, sweet warrior, and the words immediately ring the bells, sweet warrior, bringing about the paradox of human nature very powerfully. We as human beings long and resist at the same time. Sometimes love and distance ourselves at the same time. And it is this power of the poetry to bring about the complexities of human nature, the paradoxical nature of our desires very powerfully. Welcome to Swayam MOOC on British Poetry and Drama 14th to 17th century. I am Dr. Vandana Rajoriya and I am very happy to have you all with us today. Today we are going to take up a detailed discussion of sonnet number 57 of Spenser's sonnet sequence EMMRC. In our last class, we had taken up a detailed discussion of sonnet number 75. The atmosphere of sonnet number 75 was completely different. It offered a calm, peaceful landscape. We were by the seashore, poet was alone and eternizing love. But from the calm, the peaceful, serene musical atmosphere of seashore, now in this sonnet, we enter into battlefield. We travel back in the time when love was not fulfilled, when love was being tried, tested and rejected. And here lover is in the battlefield and his words are but armors. So grab your pen and paper and join me in taking up a detailed study of sonnet number 57. Before we dive into deep analysis, let's take a moment to reflect upon what we are aiming at in this session today. By the end of the session, you will be able to interpret the metaphor of love as warfare in sonnet number 57 and reflect on its emotional consequences for both lover and beloved. Analyze the poem's structure, tone and vivid imagery to understand how Spenser critiques dramatic tension. Examine the power dynamics between the speaker and the beloved and understand the Renaissance idea of love and courtship. Compare sonnet number 57 and 75 to explore Spenser's evolving vision of love and the larger emotional arch of EMMRC. Identify the volta and explain how it marks a shift in the poem's emotional focus and argument. Let's begin our close engagement with the poem. As we read the poem, notice the rhyme, rhythm, notice the poet's feelings, the ache, the passion, the hurt in his heart. As we are reading, grab a pen and highlight any word that appeals to you, that speaks to you, that forces you to pause and reflect on it. And as we are doing this, also notice the beat, the iambic pentameter we learned to notice in our last discussions. So here we go. Sweet warrior, when shall I have peace with you? High time it is this war now ended were, which I no longer can endure to sue. Nay, your incessant battery more to bear. So weak my powers, so sore my wounds appear, that wonder is how I should live a yacht, seeing my heart through launched everywhere, with 1,000 arrows which your eyes have shot. Yet shoot ye sharply still, and spare me not? But glory think to make these cruel stories? Ye crueler, far than savage peace than blot, most cruel record of your bloody powers. Yet since I sue and sue to serve your will, deign at the last to grant me peace and kill. Powerful, isn't it? Did you notice the soft, strong, powerful heartbeat-like rhythm, the iambic pentameter at work in these lines? What words did you highlight? Was it sweet warrior, beloved who is fierce and sweet at the same time? Or, what? 1,000 arrows highlighting the, great pain which love causes? This powerful sonnet by Spenser, basically to understand it fully, we need to understand the concept of love as it has evolved through the centuries and came down in the history of English literature to us. Actually, through this course, we are trying to understand two things: how English literature has come down to us through ages and what role the poetry of the Renaissance period has in shaping it. Plus, we are also trying to understand how language has been shaped through these years. And when you look at Spenser's sonnet number 57, you realize that it confirms the Renaissance idea of love and courtship. This is the time when court poetry is very powerful and very popular also, and idea of courtly love which basically extends. So initially when you look at classical literature, you get romantic love, you find chivalry, you find which love noble, where there is a knight, powerful, brave, impressive knight who is there fighting for his lady love, winning her, rescuing her. From there, as we gradually move to the Renaissance poetry, we find that here the poetry talks about love and courtship not in the ways in which we know it today. So, here suffering is glorified. So, it is not fulfillment in love which you find to be manifesting itself in all the Renaissance poem. So, let us for example go back to refer to the initial lecture and let us look at the development of sonnet. So, we saw that Petrarch, when he started writing sonnets, he was basically writing about unfulfilled love. When Wyatt adapted it, he also adapted it in the similar line, talking about love, which cannot be fulfilled. When Surrey adapted it, he talked about long silence in love. Sidney again, talked about Stella, her beloved, who basically was star-like and unattainable. Shakespeare also talked about love which cannot be fulfilled. He made love look like riddles in his poems. From all these sonneteers, when the sonnet form reaches Spenser, he does make a change, and that change reflects in the overall development and form and structure of EMRC, where he takes the form, confirms to it, painting the idea of rejection, suffering, but gradually he takes it to the idea where you see fulfillment, and you may relate to it when you look at the sonnet which we took in our earlier class, sonnet number 75, where he is celebrating fulfillment in love and he is trying to preserve that moment in eternity. Spenser also is a product of his own age, and more or less he also confirms to the established Elizabethan tradition of writing poetry in initial sonnets of EMRC. So, when you look at this sonnet, Sweet Warrior, when shall I have peace with you? What do you find here? Love that is not fulfilled, because it is glorious. Love which is fulfilled is not something which is considered to be virtuous and glorious in his times. It is suffering in love, love that endures, love that suffers, love that lasts forever, the pursuit that continues even till death. So, This is the reason why when Spenser writes this sonnet, Sweet Warrior, he also brings that suffering, that pain, that ache, and he, in line with the established tradition of the time, he also brings the armor, the battlefield, the warrior, the arms and all into the discussion. Let us now dive into the poem deeper. Let us do line by line analysis of the poem to be able to understand the inner working of the entire sonnet, our 14-line poem, explicitly. So, how does it begin? Let us look at it again. Sweet warrior, when shall I have peace with you? High time it is, this war now ended were, which I no longer can endure to sue. Nay, your incessant battery more to bear. So it is the lover who is tired, lover who is already feeling exhausted, and he's pleading to his beloved because he feels that he just cannot endure it anymore. He is tired, he's feeling hopelessness, but still when he looks at the beloved, he just cannot let her go. So the poem is about love which hurts and hurts deeply, but we just cannot let it go. So he says, sweet warrior, when shall I have peace with you? So it begins with pleading, it begins with prayer. He's pleading her to stop, to have mercy on him. But the beloved, she doesn't seem to have mercy on him, and therefore, nay, your incessant battery more to bear. So poet says, it is high time. I have been pleading since long. I have been trying to win your favor, a smile, some approval from you since long, and I feel it, I cannot endure it anymore. So please, dear, just have some mercy on me. But then the beloved doesn't budge even an inch, and therefore he says, nay, your incessant battery more to bear. Then from there, in the next stanza, what does he say? So weak my powers. He's feeling completely powerless. Beloved, in her ruthlessness, is irresistible, very, very powerful. And what does he say? So weak my powers, so sore my wounds appear. Obviously, here the power he is talking about is power to endure rejection, to endure this feeling of not being approved. And the wounds which he talks about are the aches of heart, the feeling of longing, loss, the feeling of helplessness, because he just cannot imagine life or happiness without the beloved. So these metaphorical wounds basically very beautifully highlight how much pain he is experiencing in his heart at this consistent rejection and at this rude behavior of the beloved. So he says, so weak my powers. He doesn't feel that he is having any power to resist this rejection anymore. So sore my wounds appear, that wonder is how I should live a yacht. He is in fact, surprised. How is it that he is even alive after, so long pursuit and such rejection? And he says, seeing my heart through launched everywhere. He weaves a very beautiful metaphor where, you can see his heart, every pore of his heart bleeding, arrows being shot into every part of the heart, every nerve. So he says, seeing my heart through launched everywhere with 1,000 arrows which your eyes have shot. So the metaphor very beautifully talks about that. What is it that is hurting him? It is not actual arrow actually, it is the glances of the beloved which basically he just cannot ignore, he just cannot stand these glances. So in the next quatrain, he moves again, he says, yet shoot ye sharply still. So even though you can see that I am completely powerless, I cannot endure it anymore, but you do not stop. Still you are rejecting me. Still you are refusing to attend to me. I have tried to prove my worthiness, so many times, but still you do not seem to be considering. So he says, yet shoot ye sharply still and spare me not, but glory think to make these cruel stories. So you think it is glorious to battle like this, to resist like this, to hurt like this? He is trying to appeal her sense of justice. So if you think it is justified, if you think it is noble, no, it is not. So he says, ye crueler far than savage base than blot, most cruel record of your bloody powers. So it's like he's trying to highlight here that this record which you're trying to make of, your glorious rejection, it is not something which is really great. So he is trying to appeal to her emotions, he is trying to move her to pity him, he is again trying to appeal to her sense of justice. But then when the poet sees that nothing would work, he reaches to the last line where even innovation of Spenser comes into picture, because it is called Volta. Volta basically is a sharp dramatic shift in the tone of the poem. So up till now the tone is that of pleading, prayers, helplessness, rejection, but from here the tone will shift. Let us see how. So he says, yet since I sue and sue to serve your will, yet since I sue and sue to serve your will, deign at the last to grant me peace and kill. So finally he surrenders. He says, I have been trying, but it seems that you would not listen, you would not change, and therefore, my dear, I surrender here completely. I leave myself at your disposal. Here I am, all yours, whether you want to make peace with me or you want to kill me. Because there is never say die thing here. She may make peace by fulfilling his desire, or she may reject and kill him. But he has surrendered and he just cannot help it anymore. What makes this sonnet powerful? Is it the meter, the rhythm, rhyme, choice of words, or is it the emotion, the feeling? Is it the lover who is tired, who is wounded, exhausted, but still not fighting, who is completely feeling vulnerable but still not giving up? It is when you reflect upon this idea that you realize what is most powerful and most important in poetry. It is the moment captured in eternity. It is the emotion captured in eternity. Now, let us look at the deeper questions which the poem seems to be raising. Yes, superficially when you look at it, it is a poem about love which is facing consistent rejection. But when you dive deeper into it, we always talk about this, that in poetry, literal meaning is important, but suggested meaning is more important. So when you look at this poem, when you dive deeper into the story, the written words, and you look at their import, then you realize that it is as much a poem about gender dynamics of the time, about idea of love as it existed in the time, about idea of power, idea of masculinity, vulnerability, idea of ethics, as much as it is about love. Let us look at the thematic concerns of the poem one by one. One of the most powerful and prominent thematic concern of the poem obviously is the idea of love. But how do you find this idea of love to be manifesting itself? We did take a quick discussion of this earlier also. Here the idea of love conforms to the existing standards of the idea of love of the time, where love which is tried, tested, which is not fulfilled is the love which is glorified. But Spenser in the poem, though he takes up this theme, so the love here for Spenser also is not being fulfilled. But while in earlier Renaissance poetry, you find that the poets are comfortable, they settle with describing the lover who persists, the lover who is wounded, the lover who is struggling. But Spenser goes one step ahead, from them all, and he doesn't pause there. In fact, he goes one step ahead and he makes the lover surrender. There is no pride for him in not surrendering, still fighting. He surrenders and he grants complete power to the lady love. And as I am talking to you about this, I am reminded of our initial sessions of Geoffrey Chaucer's Wife of Bath's prologue. When we were talking about Wife of Bath's prologue, we did talk about Wife of Bath's tale, where she highlights this idea very powerfully in the question, what women desire most? And she says it is sovereignty. And somehow Spenser, through his philosophical speculative depth, has understood this, and therefore in surrendering the beloved via the last lines of the sonnet, he somehow grants her this sovereignty, this absolute power. And in doing so, what is it that he talks about? Love. That love which surrenders, that love which makes the beloved powerful is more noble, it is more cherishable. And it is because of this that this sonnet gets its unique power and appeal, irresistible appeal that continues to influence readers since ages, and we are reading it even today. The next thematic concern of the poem is the idea of masculinity and idea of vulnerability. When you look at the Renaissance poetry of the time, when you look at the sonnets of Petrarch, when you look at the sonnets of Sidney, Shakespeare, then you realize that males are represented as vulnerable. And it is really amazing also, because when you look at all the other treatises, religious documents, letters, the practices, the norms of the time, you realize that women in the society are not having much power. But then when you look at the tradition of poetry, there you find all the men, all the lovers, men are lovers. They are courting the beloved who doesn't approve of their pleadings, their love, and it continuously rejects them. So these men are completely vulnerable, they are completely powerless. And this idea of masculinity is what Spenser also adopts to it. But with his twist, with his surrendering to her and choosing to not fight with her, he somehow grants the lover a unique power. So he rises above the other lovers of his time. And the entire makeshift forces us to think about the idea of masculinity and idea of vulnerability as you find in poetry of the time. Next theme basically is, it centers around the idea of beloved and role of beloved. Now, when you look at this role of beloved in this poem, what do you find? Beloved is not present, she is completely absent. These days, we are talking as much about presences as we are talking about absences also. So, in poetry, while presence speaks, silence also speaks very powerfully. So, you look at the entire sonnet and you realize that beloved is absent here. She is not present, not once she speaks. Now, when you look at the gender dynamics and how it works, then what do you feel? Does this absence of the beloved make her powerful, or it denies her personality? It grants her complexity but denies her the power to explain. Now, this is a question which I leave to you all to reflect. We will take it up in the later sessions where we will be taking up a detailed comparative discussion of all the sonnets of Spenser we have taken up till now. So, keep reflecting upon how gender dynamics works in this poem and how this absence, this silence of the beloved speaks to us, how we correspond to it. The next thematic concern in the poem is ethics how do you see ethics at work here? How do you see power of ethics manifested here? Lover who is so consistent, lover who is pleading her, cajoling her and accepting the pain, the ache, the hurt and still not giving up. There is no idea anywhere that the lover is in any way less than what the beloved aspires for. It is projected just that she amuses, she takes pride in rejecting the lover. So, what does it speak about the idea of ethics? Is it noble to reject such a lover, such commitment, or it is something else which is highlighted here? So, as we leave our discussion of the thematic concerns here for today, I leave you thinking. Think more deeply about how presence and absences in this poem speak to us. How the idea of gender dynamics, masculinity, power speaks to us in this poem. As we come to an end of our close reading of sonnet number 57 today, let us take a moment to look at it again, what we have explored today. We started our discussions taking into consideration the literary and historical tradition of sonnet writing and how Spenser innovated it. Then we took a detailed line by line analysis of the poem where we understood the emotional arch of the poem and the time. It was followed by a discussion of thematic concerns of the poem where we looked at the gender dynamics, the idea of love, idea of masculinity and vulnerability. We also explored the question of ethics in the poem. I invite you to think about one more thing. When you look at the sonnet, what do you feel? This surrender, does it make the lover weak or it grants him unique power? Keep reflecting on this and think about this. Why is it that even today we keep on returning to a poem which is written in 1590? It is the element of universality in it. It is because even we know, even today we feel this pain, this hurt, this vulnerability, and just like poet, many a times, even today we feel like saying, when shall I have peace? So as you keep thinking about this poem, its impact, its import, get ready to explore the next sonnet. Be ready with the text of the next sonnet, which is sonnet number 67 in our next class, where the scene changes completely. So from the exhausted warrior, you now move ahead and meet a persistent hunter. From a beloved who continuously is rejecting, is ruthless and doesn't change, you now meet a beloved who becomes soft and the rejection now changes in consent. So, this is all for today. See you in the next session. Thank you.